pages under transmissions for the one nearest you. AA, MCO, AMCO.
500.
Oh, bank.
What is it?
Excuse me, bank.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question to ask you.
What is it?
What would you call a bank that helps you save for your child's education?
Well, I'd call that a bank.
Helps you buy a new car.
Well, that's a bank that...
Helps you add a new wing on your house.
Oh, that bank.
Or helps you pay your bills more easily. What would you call that bank?
I'd call that the banks that help you help yourself.
I'd call it the American banks.
Red up. Red up.
Jacksonville's Television 12, WTLV.
This is Television 12 News. Sports with Walt Dunbar. Weather with Dave McLaughlin. And news editor Eric Anderson.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Underwood Jewelers, Jacksonville's oldest quality jewelers. Now, here's Eric Anderson.
Good evening. Among our stories tonight, the facts and figures of remodeling for the new court system in Jacksonville. A story from Jacksonville Beach where a state senator and Chamber of Commerce leaders are at odds over that street end question. Duval's school superintendent has offered further comment today on teacher bargaining. We'll hear that. And Arthur Mickey Spillane can't believe the Jacksonville protest over his new book. But first, the cost figures are in for renovation of the Duval County Courthouse. That remodeling job is being done to make room for additional courtrooms to comply with Florida's new court structure. That becomes effective on January 1st. For more on the story, here is Television 12's Clyde Montgomery.
The cost figures to accomplish renovation of the courthouse and a former elementary school to relocate the sheriff's department come to over $1 million. That's well above the preliminary cost projections of $500,000 made earlier this year by the city administration. The mayor, along with his administrative aides, appeared before members of the council today to ask if the monies could be appropriated on an emergency basis. The council several months ago approved the expenditure of over $300,000 for renovation of the 6th floor of the courthouse that's being used as a record storage area by several governmental offices. The present renovation proposal, however, would not involve remodeling the 6th floor of the courthouse, only the first 3 floors of that building. The 6th floor would continue to be used as a storage area. That prompted several councilmen to ask why. Councilman Earl Huntley, for one, suggested the government hold an old-fashioned garage sale and dispose of all of the unnecessary records stored there. Councilman Don Brewer suggested that the records might be microfilmed so the 6th floor could be used for a portion of the needed office space. In any event, the next say-so on the proposed renovation spending request will come from the Finance Committee of the Council. For Television 12 News, this is Clyde Montgomery, City Hall.
The Jacksonville Beach Chamber of Commerce has taken Senator Dan Scarborough to task for using its street ends as a political football. At a news conference today, Chamber Executive Director Bob Nelson had this to say about the swirling controversy.
The senator has made statements, and I will quote, "The continued giveaway of street ends will result in the loss of federal funds for the erosion control program so badly needed by the beaches. Yet the record will prove in Tallahassee, when the senator did represent the beaches, which he will not any longer, he never lifted his finger to help save the Duval County beaches from erosion. He never once helped Earl Dixon. There are 41 street ends still open in Jacksonville Beach. 4 have been closed, and 1 is now past its 2nd reading. There are 18 walkways to the ocean, and that leaves 59 accesses to the beach in Jacksonville Beach alone. Now, the federal regulation calls for 1 access to the beach for every half mile. Now, in Jacksonville Beach, that would be a total of 8 accesses. The senator claims that we are going to lose federal funding. Well, if you only need 8 and you have 59, there is a big difference. This chamber has been on record, as the majority of this citizen knows, that we want the beaches developed, but we want them to be developed for the citizenry of Duval County and for the businesses as well. This can be done, but we've got to work together and not by political innuendos from people who have never stood up to be counted in defense of the erosion program, in the defense of conservation, or in the defense of ecology. This is a new Senator Scarborough to us. We hope that he would mean it, but his past record does not prove it so.
Scarborough has challenged Nelson and the chamber to a full and open forum on the matter of street end closings. Nelson so far has not responded to the senator's call for verbal battle. Another battle today in the war over the amendment to the city charter dealing with collective bargaining for teachers. Here's a report on that from Television 12's education editor, Stan Sanders.
The battlefield with the Southside Businessmen's Club. Leading the charge was Duval County School Superintendent Dr. Cecil Hardesty. With members of the City Council in the audience, along with the president of the Duval Teachers Association, Hardesty hit hard on the power grab of the City Council, insisting that if the amendment is approved, the mayor and the City Council would have the power to approve or reject any negotiated agreement, even before the school board acted on it. He itemized improvements in the system and then spelled out the possible dangers of collective bargaining.
The record shows that most teacher strikes occur where there is collective bargaining. The last year for which complete figures are available, 1970-71, there were 130 teacher strikes nationwide. There have been an estimated 120 teacher strikes this year. Teachers in Washington, D.C., even though serving under a contract with a no-strike provision, were out on strike during the latter part of September. Indianapolis teachers are out on strike now. Portland, Oregon closed schools 6 weeks early last year. The Philadelphia School District, which last month settled the largest teacher strike in its history, is at $52 million in the red and has money enough to run through April 12th. Chicago and Detroit schools, who bargain collectively, are in financial straits that say they do not have money enough to close the school year. Thank you very much, sir.
Teacher representatives at the meeting and at least one councilman questioned the interpretation of Hardesty of the present city charter and the amendment which will appear on the November ballot. In another education happening, a group of happy and excited members of Edward White Senior High School staff and student body gathered in the auditorium to hear the results of the findings of a 22-member visiting committee of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools in regards to the school's full accreditation. Principal Fraser Long welcomed the group and introduced the Ed White Chorus, which in turn entertained the body. The committee praised the students' activities program as being an integral part of the school and also praised the strong faculty support. The music indicating breaks between classes instead of the ordinary bells was also lauded. John McDonald, who headed the group, had kind words for the modular system of class assignments. County school administrators listened and liked what they heard as committee members praised the 2-year-old plant. It was agreed that the school meets Southern Association requirements and should be granted full accreditation by the body at its annual meeting in early December. The new school was granted provisional accreditation when it opened, since its students did come from fully accredited plants.
Television 12 News continues after this word from Mr. H.F. Underwood, the president and owner of Underwood Jewelers.
Hi, everybody. In recent years, most of you have been aware of the phenomenal rise in price of the dowdy birds and the beam birds. Beam birds that we sold for $600 are now selling in the New York auctions for $4,000 and more. Of course, since Mr. Beam died, there are no more original beam bird creations, and so the market keeps going up and up on the prices. Today we have another artist, the Sibis Galleries, and they are producing porcelains that are as fine as anything that Mr. Beam produced in his best days. The figure you're looking at now is a Tay bird. These are made in Italy, and these two are acclaimed by museums all over the world. The next piece that you're going to see is a piece by Royal Worcester. the Van Ruckenfeld pheasant. This is one of a pair of pheasants, and this also is exquisitely fashioned. You can appreciate the color and the life size of these figures. The next figure that you're going to see is one of my real prizes. This is a Cibus Indian. And while these figures are still in production, every one that they will make before these molds are destroyed has been spoken for and bought. So that this is a really rare edition which you will see in museums in the years to come. And the people who buy these figures will almost certainly have to buy them from people who bought them when they were first put on the market. The next figure is an interesting one. This is another T-bird, a blue jay. He looks like he's just about ready to fly away with that acorn in his mouth. And then the next figure is very interesting. This is a Malcolm Moran figure and is made of bronze. So far as I know, Malcolm Moran is the only man in the world who does this kind of work. It is exquisitely fashioned. There may be others doing it, but nobody approaches him in the style and quality of his workmanship. It's important, I think, to point out to you that Underwood Jewelers is the sole distributor in Jacksonville of all these artists' figures. Whatever quota we get from them is sold by us in this town. Now, we have 5 stores in Jacksonville, as most of you know, and we try to distribute these rare pieces around to the different stores. So we do urge you to come in and look at the vast collection that we have, not just the figures I showed you on the screen, but figures of different sizes and different prices, all exquisitely done, which one of these days, as I have said before, will wind up in some museum. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon.
One of the defendants in the so-called Watergate bugging incident has been convicted, but not in direct connection with the allegations which have become a national campaign issue. Bernard Barker of Miami has been given a suspended 60-day jail sentence for misusing a notary public seal on a campaign check. The check itself, however, has figured in the Watergate story, turned up in the hands of another of the Watergate defendants. What effects such matters are having on the late stages of the campaign will be under close scrutiny in the next few days. Tom Sanders has an educated view of that.
Apparently, Eric, they are not making too great an impact. As all of you know, the political experts have said George McGovern must make a big last-week surge if he expects to have any chance of victory over President Nixon next Tuesday. A daily Sindlinger poll suggests that that is not occurring. In fact, in the past 24 hours, McGovern has had a fractional loss, about a point, from his totals of yesterday. In turn, the president has gone up 2.3%. Among the first-time voters, the young people, there's been no real change since the last report, only a fraction of a percentage point for each candidate. This has been relatively true for several days, indicates no material shift in sentiment.
Governor Ruben Askew is trying to prevent the Gulf Coast Power Company from passing the corporate profits tax along to consumers. At a Tallahassee news conference today, Governor Askew commented on his reasoning for asking Public Service Commissioner Jess Yarborough to withdraw from the case if it is reopened. Yarborough was defeated in the Democratic primary by Senator Gerald Lewis of Miami. The Gulf Power $3.7 million rate increase became a hot issue in that campaign. The governor was asked if he would make the same request of Senator Lewis and GOP candidate Paula Hawkins if the question isn't settled by January 1st.
I think that when the Gulf Power decision, if it is still pending at the time that either Mrs. Hawkins or Senator Lewis would be the successful candidate in this regard, I think because it's been made a campaign issue, I think that the same question would be open to them as we've opened in regard to Mr. Yarborough. There is a difference, however, in the case of Mr. Yarborough in that he made the decision and had the benefit of a substantial amount of testimony before such time really as he made that decision.
A charge was made during the hearing yesterday in the PSC that you wanted to put your own man on the board. Is that correct?
No, sir, that isn't correct, because under the law, as we interpret it, there is no provision for me to appoint a replacement on the Public Service Commission in the way in which we proceeded in asking disqualification.
Our news continues in a moment.
Quality Jewelers.
nights you laugh at the weather in knit raincoats of Celanese Fortrel, protected against rain and stain by DuPont Zipel. They're the newest way to get ready for rain in a long, long time.
See the new London fog styles at Ferschkitz of Florida.
You won't believe the values you'll find at A&P Wheel until you compare them. We know you'll like the quality, and we know you'll save money at A&P Wheel. As a matter of fact...
Why don't you give them a for instance?
USDA inspected fresh whole fryers, 2 in a bag, 28 cents a pound. Super Right heavy beef T-bone steaks, bone in, are $1.38 a pound at A&P Wheel.
A&P Wheel, where economy originates.
Members of the Committee to Re-elect the President were in Jacksonville today on their campaign trek through Florida. And for a report on that, here's Brenda Sutton.
Wife of the Attorney General, Mrs. Richard Kleindienst, led the trio in comments to the news media and members of the Republican Party. Mrs. Kleindienst said that in Washington, D.C., where the President has the most direct control over law enforcement, the crime rate has gone down 26% in the first 6 months of this year. With her was Mrs. Herbert Stein, whose husband is an economic advisor to the President. Mrs. Stein stressed that 2.4 million people have been added to the workforce during the Nixon administration. Mrs. George Schultz, whose husband is Secretary of Labor, said that the President's intention is to hold the line on taxes and government spending in order to control inflation. Later in the morning, the 3 Nixon supporters left for visits to Orlando and Tampa. Another sign of mounting political interest today was an open forum at the Southside Women's Club. The official greeter was Charlie Brown, a large collie. Local candidates in next Tuesday's election addressed over 100 women. Charlie's jacket said, "Vote as you doggone please, but please vote."
And Dave, for campaigning or anything else outdoors, this has been ideal weather.
Yes, and it will continue to be ideal weather right on through tomorrow. We expect much more of the same. In fact, around North Florida today, almost like summer again, the warm temperatures up to as high as 86 degrees in Gainesville. Started out this morning with 64, while over in Daytona, the morning started out with a low of 72, working its way up to a very pleasant 81 degrees. A little bit closer to home, they took advantage of the sea breezes out on the beaches, up to 81 degrees there, starting out at 68, while downtown Jacksonville, just a degree higher, 82, and the morning low mercury was 64. Tomorrow should be a day very much like today. We expect those east to southeasterly winds to continue, and just clear to partly cloudy skies, a bit of fog in the morning, and rain very unlikely tomorrow. Well, for the boaters, we expect those winds out of the east and southeast, 10 to occasionally 15 knots, seas 2 feet near shore, and as high as 4 feet offshore. Clear to partly cloudy skies prevail at this time over the 2-state area, for the most part that is, except in the extreme northern reaches. In fact, the only really cloudy station is in Atlanta, where it's 66 cloudy degrees there, while most of the stations to the south are reporting just partly cloudy to completely clear skies with very pleasant conditions. Here in Florida, the capital city, 81 under clear skies. Out in the Panhandle, 78 degrees in Pensacola. A bit of haze there, but skies clear. The southern portion of the state, for the first time in a long time, no showers at all anywhere in that southern half of the state. It's dry all over Florida. Looking at our radar, we can see that at least within 50 miles, absolutely nothing showing up. Really great conditions, just plain no rain in sight. At present, outside of TV 12 studios, our temperature, a very comfortable 72 degrees. The relative humidity is 76%. Our winds out of the east-southeast, only up to about 6 to 7 miles per hour. Barometer on its way up, 30 and 1400 inches. Well, old man winter is really taking it serious as far as the west is concerned. One small area of Wyoming had temperatures below zero this morning, while the 32 degrees or freezing line dipped all the way down into old Mexico in some places and then zoomed back up behind the storm. So winter is serious and winter is moving toward the east. This cold line tonight will be farther to the east. Now, the warm air flowing up in advance of this storm is rather obvious by the 60-degree line spreading all the way up into the southern portion of Indiana and Illinois. Of course, this warm wedge will move farther to the east as the storm moves off. Well, you can't have all that cold weather without leaving a few calling cards, and that cold weather left calling cards in Denver. 13 inches of the white fluffy stuff fell there, but that was nothing in comparison to a little town called Woodland Park, which is some 20 miles to the northwest of Colorado Springs. 34 inches of that white powder all over the ground there. Responsible for this entire mass is the low-pressure area or winter storm now over Kansas. It's moving toward the east and northeast. In advance of this system, heavy rain falls throughout much of the Missouri area, right up to around Chicago, and farther off to the east. Now, as far as we're concerned, that rain will move on farther to the northeast, but the cold front will approach Florida, entering the state Friday, and it'll turn a little bit cooler here by Saturday, while our forecast for tomorrow, continuing rather nice weather. Partly cloudy and mild, the high 85, overnight low 62, southeasterly winds 10 to 15. Leave a minute or two early for work in the morning because there will be a bit of that fog around. Eric?
Thank you, Dave. In a moment, Walt Dunbar and a look at sports.
At Carnation, we just built a bigger instant breakfast. New Special Morning. It adds even more nutrition to milk than regular Carnation instant breakfast. Now there's 33% more protein, plus more vitamins, minerals, energy. Milk contributes substantial nutrition. Read the label. No time for your regular breakfast? Have New Special Morning, the bigger instant breakfast.
You may not be worth a lot of money, but look at it this way. If you're a high school graduate, you'll earn about $371,000 during your lifetime. If you finished college, your earnings will average around $584,000. This is the way we look at you at Barnett Bank. Not just the paycheck you deposit with us each week, but the business you could do with us over your lifetime. For instance, the money you deposit in your checking account, your savings account, and the money you borrow through the years could easily add up to as much as $500,000 worth of business. Now you can see why Barnett wants your business and why we take such good care of you once we get it. We want you to do all your banking business at Barnett. We figure if we take better care of you day by day, you'll stay with us for a lifetime. It's as simple as that. Barnett Bank. You could do $500,000 of business with us, and we never forget it.
Walt, the football season, but baseball is still making news.
That's right, Eric, and the Philadelphia Phils went to the Ozarks for a new manager today. Los Angeles coach Danny Ozark was the surprise choice of Phil's general manager, Paul Owens. Ozark has had no big league managerial experience. Meantime, it seems one of our Sunshine Staters might be making it big. A report in Dallas has former Florida State baseball star Dick Hauser getting the job as manager of the Texas Rangers. Hauser is now a coach for the New York Yankees. Coach Larry Jones of Florida State University saw his team make costly mistakes against Auburn last week, but the FSU boss doesn't contemplate any major changes for Houston.
We're not really changing our defense as far as any alignments or game plan particularly. Our personnel really stays the same with Buzzy Lewis as strong safety and David Snell at weak side or free safety. We have to work a lot harder on the options and the option pass. Things of this nature, quick screens, have to get ready for a lot of play-action type passes, a lot of options, a very quick offense is what Houston has. A very intricate and quick offense. It has a lot of intricacies plus a lot of power.
Well, weekend prep football gets an early start tomorrow when Lee and Stanton meet over in the Gator Bowl. Stanton goes into the game with a record of 2 wins, 3 losses, and a tie. The Blue Devils have lost some close ones, games that might have gone the other way if Larry Phillips had been available. The tight end and linebacker suffered a broken ankle bone early in the season, and head coach Carl Hughes has been trying to fill that gap left in the lineup.
Well, that was a tremendous blow. So much had taken us 3 or 4 boys to replace him. We had to get a replacement as middle linebacker, another one as tight end, and we're still trying to find somebody who can generate some spirit among the team as he had done.
Well, who was taking over as far as defensively to more or less fill some of that gap?
Defensively, we have a senior player, Edgar Perry, who's filling in and doing a wonderful job defensively, but we can't find anyone who can fill that void on offense, now that spirit, that go-go spirit that he generated among the team.
A rare honor for running back Larry Brown of the NFL Washington Redskins. For the 2nd consecutive week, Brown has been named Offensive Player. He racked up a career high of 191 yards against the New York Giants. Local golfer Steve Melnick was in Jacksonville briefly this afternoon before heading to Texas and his next tournament.
I asked Steve about his first year on the PGA Tour.
Well, it hasn't been anything other than what I expected. If you play well, you make a lot of money, and if you don't, you don't. I haven't played up to my potential or even close to what I thought I could do on the tour this year. I've played very poorly, but I've got to be objective about it and say that knowing that I haven't played well this year and still having made the money that I've made, it's going to be encouraging when I begin to play well.
Steve, you've chopped off quite a few pounds this year.
I have, Walt. Not so much this year as I have over the last 18 months. I've lost about 55 or 60 pounds, and I feel a lot better. And believe it or not, it's caused me to make some changes and adjustments in my swing. And I guess within the last 4 or 5 months, I've just become to get used to them now.
Well, Big Jack Nicklaus had himself a great year, honored as top golfer of the season.
Well, Jack stands alone at the top. There's no one that you can really compare with him. He deserves everything he gets. He's by far the greatest player I think that's ever played, and we all look up to him out there, and I'm amazed when he doesn't win every week.
Well, Nicklaus was named Player of the Year today by the Professional Golfers Association. He won 6 tournaments. His earnings are close to $300,000 for the season. Eric Anderson back with the news in a moment.
The minute I saw it, I knew it was just what I wanted. But you know, there was a time I thought I could never own a car like this. But I talked to some of the people at the Atlantic banks, and we worked it out together. Any bank will loan you the money to buy a new car, but there aren't many that'll finance a dream.
Do even better for yourself and let the Atlantic banks help. The Atlantic banks help.
What would you do if you owned an auto dealership close to all the metropolitan areas of North Florida, where the city and county taxes were much lower, and where your overhead was lower than big city dealerships? Well, you'd probably do what the auto dealers of Green Cove Springs do. You'd charge a lower price. Well, that's why the auto dealers of Green Cove Springs invite you to save a lot by paying them a little visit. The owner-managed dealerships of Green Cove Springs have a vast selection: Buick, Oldsmobile, Ford, Mercury, American Motors, Chrysler, Dodge, Pontiac, Plymouth, Chevrolet, and all types of trucks. Because these dealers pay lower taxes and have lower overhead, they can offer you a lower price, so a little ride can save you a lot. Just take a short drive to Green Cove Springs and the dealership of your choice. We're sure your little ride will save you a lot.
The largest construction contract ever awarded to a member of a minority group was signed today in Jacksonville's Federal Building. Robert Singleton's firm has been contracted for almost $2.5 million to modernize the Federal Aviation Administration's Traffic Control Center at Hilliard. The contract is the result of President Nixon's program to get more minority-owned businesses in competition equally on the open market. SBA Director Wiley Messick said the Southeast leads in the number of contracts awarded so far under this program. And that's our news. The NBC Nightly News is next.
Shut up. You're going to shoot it now? This is television.